I've just spent several weeks looking at different types of Ortlieb panniers. I just couldn't figure out online what the differences between a lot of the panniers were. There's the city versions of things, there's these Backroller versions, so you can have the classic or standard and you can have the plus versions. There's different fabrics, different sizes. We can even touch a little bit at the end about this handlebar bag as well. I've ended up with these red Ortlieb classic panniers, and I'm going to talk you through the reasons for those. So the first thing to point out, sometimes you'll see references to QL1 and QL2, or I think it's QL2.1. But basically what it is talking about is this is one of the ways you attach your panniers to the rack. This is I guess the older version, which is the QL1. So here you need an Allen key. You can loosen and tighten that, and then that'll allow you to shuffle these along from side to side to fit your rack. With this QL2 version, all you do, instead of needing an Allen key, you pop that up, you slide these along to where you want it, and you clip them back down. It's probably useful whilst we're doing this, if you don't need no Ortlieb panniers at all, then they all come with this sort of quick release strap, which is really nice. So let's imagine that your pannier is on your rack. If you come along to it and just lift this handle up, this sort of grab handle, then you can see those little closures pop out, and that pulls the bag. So if it's sat on your rack, you do that and it pulls it straight off your rack, which is really nice. This has got some inserts in that you can see they move around a little bit, but it's not a problem when that's on your rack. It's all nice and tight. So you can have these with, if I do that, then you could sort of pop them out. They sort of clip in and out. I won't do it, but you can have them without these inserts or spacers if your rack is thicker. This one, I've got 10mm ones in here, which fit my rack. There's basically 3 inserts, so you can have no inserts or a choice of any of the 3 inserts, giving you 4 different size options. I've got the 10mm ones in, but there's some 8mm, there's 12mm, and without, I guess, is 14mm. So lots of options there. They all come with that, but if you are buying some secondhand, then that's just something to watch out for, because you want to make sure that these options are still included for the different inserts. That's the Q1, so Q2, so this is also Q2. But there's a slight difference with the newer models down here. So this, for example, happens to have an up and a down. These newer ones just have, in this case, the down. What you can do is undo these, turn the whole thing around and have it as the up version instead. To me and to most people, I don't think that adjustment is really sort of important or needed. But one thing I did notice, the way these sort of clips, if you will, are set up as standard, normally there will be a smaller hole here, I guess a gap between the bag and the frame. If you unscrew this fully, instead of it being like that, if you then turn it like that, then it gives you an extra 3mm gap. It just makes this sort of protrude a little bit more. It sits a little bit higher. You can see how it works here. So that's the standard way it is. But if you turn it like that, it sits a bit prouder. So when you put that back on, then instead of having a 10mm gap, you've got a 13mm gap. I don't think that's particularly useful for me, but for some people it might be useful. This is a city pannier, and this is the Backroller Plus. So the Plus describes the difference in material. I'll come on to that in a second, but first let's just look at the difference between the city and the Backroller. So I already had this city, and I was looking at potentially getting some more. The reasons I like these city ones are they're cheaper than the Backroller, and they're also a little bit lighter. Now, I like cheaper, I like lighter, so I was really tempted by these. There was a few little differences which didn't really make a huge sort of concern for me. This one, when you look in, is just sort of a plain pannier, if you will. This one has some pockets in. So if we look in here, there's these pockets. You can actually remove them with, I think you need a screwdriver, but basically there's a pocket there which you can open. and as well as there being that pocket sort of behind the pocket is almost a second pocket. So yeah, you can remove these, as I say. You can see that that lifts up, but basically you just need to unscrew the other side of these, and there's a screw on either side, and that'd come out. So yeah, the back rollers come, and they're slightly heavier, I think, in part because of that, and in part because of a few extra things. Now, this is the main difference that I'm going to come on to, which is when you look at these, I'd read quite a lot that the fabric of the City was not as tall and therefore it was lighter. Now, I don't think that's true. If I put these sort of the bottoms together, if you will, then they're basically the same height. So I think people have described that incorrectly. What I think they were trying to perhaps describe is you can get more stuff or less stuff in the back roller than the City, and that's ultimately why I decided to go for the back roller rather than the City. So what I mean by that is this sort of closure system on the back rollers is much more flexible. Here I've got one of the back rollers, and I've got you know, sort of slightly more stuff in it, and it sort of doesn't matter that, let's say it would normally be full here and I've got it full there. That doesn't matter because the way these straps work, this actually can become a shoulder strap, but it goes around here. You can basically finish the bag wherever you want, like higher or lower, and just roll it a little bit more, and that's all absolutely fine. That'll accommodate it. What I have loved about these City rollers is the simplicity, but actually it turns out it's too simple, because if I just want to roll this down and then clip this closed, I love that this is just so simple. I think that's a really nice system, whereas on this you've got to sort of faff around, like once you've wrapped it down you attach that and then the other side and then put it through here. And I did like the fact that on the Cities they just clip straight in here. The disadvantage of that though is what really led me to not buy the City and to go with the back roller. I'm going to put one of these boxes in just to show you. If I slide that in there, when I then come to fasten this up, you'll see what I mean, and I suspect this is the same for you. So there, I've got slightly more gear in there than you might plan, so it's a little bit taller than maybe it is sometimes, and you can see now that doesn't quite stretch. And okay, in this particular example maybe I can just about make it stretch, or I can crush the box a bit to make that fit, but you don't have that flexibility. I can't actually, you know, get that in. I don't have that flexibility, whereas on the back roller, because of the way this sort of strap system works, there's much more flexibility. Ultimately, you know, I think about if I nip into a shop and buy some bits of food and I want to put them in the top, or if I take a few layers off and I want them in there, or even just moving my gear around, I don't want to be really as constrained as I am here. So that's ultimately the reason I chose the back roller. I think it's a bit of a shame. I think there's maybe a hybrid solution that Ortlieb could have, where there's something a little bit more fixed on here, but it slides up and down a little bit. I guess I feel this is just slightly faffier with it all going around there and coming up. You know, just a small adjustment here might do the same job, but that's the reason the City didn't work for me anyway. As well as this strap down here, this is the back roller. They have this strap on top. The City doesn't have that. What I've heard this is quite useful for is, let's say these were all on my bike and the rear's here and the rack is sat in the middle. You can then get an Ortlieb bag which you put across them, which I believe these straps are then quite handy for clipping that bag on and securing it. What I'm thinking of doing is, instead of having that Ortlieb bag, I think I'm going to have just a rucksack that will go across the back. Maybe I'll use these to try and secure it on a little bit. The reason I'm interested in doing that with a rucksack rather than another Ortlieb bag is because let's say I go to a hostel and I can leave the bike there and the panniers there, and I want to have a day at the beach. I don't want to have to take one of these Ortlieb panniers to the beach. I want to just be able to throw a rucksack on. And I guess what I'm thinking is, if the rucksack is generally pretty empty, then when I do nip into a shop to buy some bits of food and bread and stuff, which, you know, when you come out with a bag full of shopping, it is actually quite a lot of volume to it. Then in theory, I'm thinking that can go in the rucksack that'll sort of not have anything inside it as a permanent home. Whereas I think the panniers, everything will have its own little place after a few days on the road. it'll have its own little place that it never really moves from. There's different fabrics. You can have the classic or standard, and you can have the plus versions. These are only about £10 more, and I thought I'm happy to pay a tenner more for a better product. But when it turned up, I didn't feel it was a better product. So this is more of a, I guess I'd call it a fabric feel rather than this PVC feel. These feel really durable and tough. I'm sure these are as well. These are really tried and tested. But I think these are newer. I'm sure they are still sort of perfectly tough enough, but I just slightly preferred these. But the main swing factor for me was I knew I wanted some of the larger panniers as well as some of the smaller panniers. And the smaller panniers, when I ordered them in the red, it was called like chili or rust or something like that, but they were really a very browny orange color. They were not red at all, and they weren't going to match. I know that sounds like a little niggly thing that they don't match, but they're just completely different colors. I like the fact that these are clearly like a nice matching set. Funny enough as well, the inside of these material, it might just be this material inside is almost a bit sticky, and it made it just a little bit harder to pack. I know that sounds silly, but the inside of these was just a lot sort of slicker and smoother. So even if it is just a little niggle, if you're going to have that each time, then yeah, I sort of preferred the non-sticky, if you will, inside of the standard version of the fabric rather than the plus version of the fabric. So sizes, these are what they call the 60 litres, so 30 litres each. These are what they call the 25 litres, so 12.5 litres each. So these are the smaller ones that I'm going to have on the front, and they're basically just baby versions of everything you've seen on this back roller here. So the same options are available. You can get the city versions of these sports rollers, but I've gone for the same standard classics front and back. This is the Ortlieb Handlebar Bag. I could have had this in red, but I decided just to go with black. Looking at it, you might assume that it opens here. It doesn't. So what happens is you've got this sticking out, which is really nice and sort of, you know, it stays proud. It's well designed that. Then if you've one-handed or one finger whilst you're on the bike, you pull this up, you can see where there's a magnet there and a magnet there. So if you pull that up, it hinges open then from the front, as opposed to where you might think it opened. So then, as you can see here, if you open it sort of from the rear, if you will, everything's facing towards you as you're cycling along, and you can look in there. This comes with this mounting strap. I've just attached this on, it clips on really easily. I think I see that as living in there, so it's not in the way, and this will still close over the top of it. What I do like about this, it's got this bag here, which I think is a really obvious candidate for putting your passport in. Other than that, I mean, it sort of is just a box, which is fine. That's what you'd expect. This one, I believe, is yeah, it's the 7 litre one. I think there's 3 different sizes in this, something like a 5, a 6.5, and a 7. I don't know why there's a 6.5 and a 7. You know, the sizes are so close together. I would have gone for the slightly smaller version, but the shop I was looking at only had these in stock, so I've gone with it. I am wondering if this is a little bit too big. I see this as being a bag that if I'm going into a shop and I've got my passport and maybe a few precious items, that I'll take this in with me. You know, it clips on and off really easily, but the fact is I don't have that many precious items that are going to fill up all this. You know, I don't have particularly loads of electronics, or, you know, I wasn't planning on taking a drone or anything that was going to, you know, need to come in with me. Everything would sort of just stay in the panniers on the bike. I'd probably lock the bike up. Who knows, maybe I'll end up putting a bike lock. Maybe I'll, you know, by the time you get a drink, and maybe if you do come out with a sandwich and you don't want to put it in the rucksack, you want it to be more accessible so you can have some snacks along the road, then I think that's what this is going to be useful for. But I do wonder if it's slightly bigger than I need. So we'll find out. This is sold separately, which is the mounting kit. This mounting kit was 20 quid. There is a 25 quid version which comes with a lock. I just wasn't that fussed about it. I thought it was just a bit of extra weight and a bit of extra cost. If I decided really like the locking version, it's not the end of the world to go out and get one as well. So yeah, I think I've not got this on the bike right now. The bike's in getting serviced before I go on the trip, but look, that I think this system will work really well, sort of a really nice, quick, simple release for if you want to take that off. So that's everything. That's the difference between the City and the Backroller. It's the difference between the classic material and the plus material. As I said, the colour in the small panniers put me off. Yeah, I like this simple closure system on the City. However, it's not going to work for me on the Trip because I feel I need something with more of a floating option for making the panniers bigger and smaller. So that's why I've gone for the Backroller pannier. That's the reason I've gone for the classic as well. This nice sturdy PVC material, and I like this matching set where I can get the sports roller with it as well. And to top it all off, I've gone for this handlebar bag, 7 litres, maybe a bit too big, but watch this space. And I'm going to literally top it all off with a rucksack that'll sit on top of those 2 rear panniers.